We've learned a lot about font families. We've looked at using Arials and Times and Romans, and I've talked about the great thing about these fonts is that the fact that they can actually go anywhere in the world on any browser and they'll pop up. But stylistically, everyone asks me, but Adrian, I really want a custom font. I really, really, really want it. I really want something beautiful. And there's two ways to do this. The old way is that you would take that beautiful title, make a screen capture of it or export it as an image, and then insert the image into your web page. Really not helpful because it actually takes up size. There's no SEO value because no search engine can search against that picture. So really isn't helpful. And as you zoom in, as you zoom out, the file gets pixelated and pretty ugly. But as a designer standpoint and as a developer, you really want an ability to take control of that font. If you want to edit the type or you want to edit the paragraph or edit the title, it really makes harder. And this is where the second choice comes in. CSS 3.0 really added something amazing, and this is what's referred to as fontface. And fontface is an ability to add a custom font into your website. There is a big asterisk behind it, and the way it works is you load in a font file, several of them, and as you use them, they actually get downloaded into the computer that actually is running the website. Just like the cache works, when you actually visit a website, inherently all the images and files are downloaded onto the desktop, on the mobile device or tablet. Fontface works the same way. There's a couple of new font things out there that are using actual web type fonts, which are an ability to call them off other libraries. Google has a web font that you can call off their files, but they're all inherently working the same thing, is you're actually downloading another piece of another font family to use in there. So let's use the one that I like using right now, which is fontface. So I'm going to go to one of my favorite websites. I've gone to fontsquirrel.com. There's various other font websites out there. There's really what you're looking for is web-based fonts or fontface. So I'm going to go to this nice website, and when I look over here at the font filter, I'm going to click on what are web fonts. I'm looking for something that has the fontface installation. Here, look at this one. This one's perfect. It says 1942 report. That looks like a fancy font. I have a link to a WebKit font, and what I'm going to do is it's asking me to download 4 files. WOFF is becoming one of the standards, but in order for it to work on everything, SVG is for iPhone, iPad, EOT is IE only, TTF works on most browsers, but not on others. So this is where the issue of cross-browser compatibility comes in, because now in order for it to work against 3 to 4 different browsers, I'm going to start having to download 4 different files. And think of it as, if this file doesn't work, I'm going to use the next. If the next doesn't work, I'm going to use the one after this. So possibly one line of code has now expanded to 4 lines of code and 4 individual files. Remember, the way fontface works is it's downloading that individual font file into your desktop or into the device, whether it be a mobile device, whether a tablet or a desktop. It's just like the cache, it's downloading it. So just very important to remember. Some of the slowest websites I've seen are using fonts that might be 2 to 3 megabytes. So kind of keep that in mind. So I've selected all of this. I hit download fontface. I'm going to click on the open example. I've expanded it. Let me drag it into my desktop. And here's where now I actually am going into my project file. If you remember when we first created my project file, I created a fonts folder. So I'm going to jump into the fonts folder, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these font files, those 4 files again, into my font directory. That's awesome. It even gives me a sample style sheet to have it work. So I'm just going to open up that sample style sheet so I can copy the example. This is what I love about it. Here it is. Here's the example wide open. I'm going to select this entire example, and I'm going to call it and actually put it into right under my H4. So I'm just putting it right there. Here's my font family. This is pretty awesome. What I might even do is I might take my comment line, put it here, and say these are fontface fonts. Let's make sure that I'm specifically tagging it for something really, really specific that I want to do. This is great. Let's actually even open up the demo here and take the line of code that they have in this demo. In this case, they're saying specify it by font family, big long name. I'm going to go into my H1, add a new line of code. Here's that fancy name. Let's make sure that it matches up. Yes, it does. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit reload. And I know that it's not going to work because I still have to specify the locations of the fonts. So I might not do this in Safari, but I'm going to use my friend, the inspector in Chrome. Let's go into Chrome. Let's close the inspector. Let's reload it, the page. And of course, it doesn't work. But now I'm going to use the inspector here to open up what's going on the page. And of course, it's giving me an error that says, hey, by the way, you're missing something. And this is the great thing about using things like the inspector to make your life easier. So what it's doing is it's looking for the font in my CSS folder. Well, I really don't want to have it in my CSS folder. I want to find it in my fonts folder. And by hitting .. it's going to take me straight into the font folder. So I'm going to copy these examples right here. Let's hit save. Let's hit reload. And there you go. Now I've got a very fancy vector font and the errors went away in the inspector. I can come in here now and say, let's try 48 or 38. Reload the page. Let's get crazy. Let's use 72. Reload the page. And this is now a nice vector font. Really exciting. This is really going to open up a whole mess of opportunities for me. But again, always remember, this might inhibit performance because I know that if I go back to my projects file, these aren't half bad. These are 128 kilobytes, 101 kilobytes. These are really, really nice small fonts. So this is something that I'd actually be really inclined to use. But again, always remember that the trade-off is it might impact performance, it might impact the size of the site, but they really want to be able to use fontface for something special. In this case, why don't we change it to my favorite color red, just for fun, just to see it working. And there you go. It's dynamic. CSS can play with it, and I'm actually able to experiment with it. I'm also, if I want, I can attach it to the font family right here. And look at that. Now I have it for the same subheader. Again, because I've already loaded in the resource, the font file, I can use it really easily. One of the things I really, really, really want to do as a backup is make sure that I have a background font selected so that if just in case something happens and some web font is broken, it'll pull up Arial just in case. So we want to really be careful with that. I might do Arial/serif or sans serif. So you always want to be careful that you have a backup. So that's fontface in a nutshell. Again, we're using multiple things. We're using it in our style sheet. We've got our header, our subhead, and we've also used the inspector to figure out if there's any errors.